Alrighty, so how do you guys paint your miniatures? I have a process. I did a video all those years ago on how to speed paint your broadside miniatures. This is my preferred method of painting broadside miniatures. Um, yeah, don't let that intimidate you. I am painting only for table quality. Okay, so let's start off with this one. That's it's Canada, but that's how they come out of the box. That's the resin plastic. And this is the undercoat that I use. Alright, so here is Rust-Oleum flat grey primer. That's the primer I use. Why do I use this one? Because it's dirt cheap. As it says, it bonds to plastic. It's flat, and it gives a great base coat. As you can see there, those ones have been done with the Rust-Oleum primer, and this one hasn't. Da, 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 da. Alright, so that's step one. Make sure you've got a nice solid grey coat. Step two is a little bit easier. We're going to add a black wash. I like this one. I also like MIG. Um, I think the Vallejo black wash is good. This is the one I got on hand at the moment. Um, give the entire ship a dousing in that undercoat, and then once it's dry, you know, I always try and get more than one ship on the go at the same time. You want that feeling of happiness that you've completed some miniatures to last, and if you do one miniature, you go, yeah, I've done one miniature, it looks great on table, and then you give up. So, well, I'm just speaking from personal experience. So I like to do half dozen at a time because you get more done, and then it inspires you to do more again because I don't know, if you do one miniature and you go, oh, that'll do me for a while. Whereas if you do half dozen, you go, well, I've got half dozens, most of a fleet, so I can go on and do some more. I guess there's psychology in painting. That's my psychology. Anyway, okay, so yep, so the primer's on. It's nice and dry. The next thing we do is hit it with the black wash. Now, why are we hitting it with the black wash? Well, because there are lovely things like windows. Um, you know, there's these gun turrets here. There's lots of lines in the gun turrets. Um, there's a lot of detail there that if you just go straight on to dry brushing these ships, you're going to miss. They're going to be there, but you want that extra layer of darkness that you're not going to paint over. Alrighty, so we'll come back with the no, the oil stage. I'll show you how to do that. Always give everything a really good shake. Um, Everything, absolutely everything. The can, make sure your spray cans are heated to 30 degrees odd. Make sure all of your paints, all of your oils are given a good shake before you open them up. Alrighty, see if I can do some of this on camera, huh? There we go. Alright, so as you can see, I've got a tiny brush, absolutely tiny, because I am not caring too much about what I do here. I want this black, I want it in the crevices, I want it in the windows, I want it in the small places, so I need a big brush to do that. Do not worry, it will all be okay. As you can see, there is no skill here at all. Just get the brush this way in because I am catching all of that oil in the spaces. That's all I'm doing. This does not require talent or skill, just persistence. And we don't want to leave any of this oil too much to pool in places we don't want it to pool. But you know, the only places that's going to happen really are on the deck, and we're going to paint over them anyway. Alright, what we want is this to pull inside those details, inside the funnels, along the torpedo netting, This ship doesn't have it, but others do. Alright, as you can see, I have not spent an awful lot of time making sure that this is fantastic. I don't need to. It's just get it on. Get it on. Alright, I'll put that one down. Now the important thing is while that's drying, don't touch it because you'll leave your fingerprints in it and they will stay there. I'm going to move this other stuff out of the way so we can see what we've done. There we go. Hopefully you can see some of this anyway on the camera. It's always nowhere near as good as being there in person. But yeah, now all I'm doing is trying to wash off some of the excess, especially off the deck, because as I say, the deck is actually going to be painted over. We're going to paint over that. So I'm just going to take some of the excess off. I'm using just a piece of really thick paper to absorb the extra gear that I'm taking off the deck. That should be about it. But as you can see, I'm also adding it to the sides of the ship as well, because we want the sides of the ship to be darker than the top of the ship. That's historically how the Germans did it. They had darker greys closer to the waterline and lighter greys as they got up into the superstructure. They thought that worked. So that's how we have to do it. Alrighty, so that's the first step. Well, that's actually the second step because I can count. First step is undercoating. Second step is applying the oil, your wash. Alright, now that that's done, I'm not going to mess with it. I'm going to leave it there until it dries. You know, as I say, this is the best way of doing it is to grab a half dozen miniatures and roll with that, because you've got some on the go, some drying, you know, and you're never stopping. Because once you stop, if you're like me, you find it hard to get back into starting again. So I'm going to move this out of the way. We'll do something a little bit smaller. We're going to do the Bouvet, because she has some beautiful detail that we want to maintain. So I'm going to start by pushing the brush into the middle of the superstructure where all those lovely gun turrets and windows are, and into the center. As you can see, I am not paying any attention. I'm just slapping this stuff on. Alrighty. That's really easy because it's a much smaller miniature. I'll leave that for a second and then I'll wipe some of that off. There you go. As you can see, lots of skill involved in doing that. Alrighty, and now we're going to take some of that oil off. I'm sure you probably do a better job at this than I do, and you don't worry so much about getting so much on there in the first place and then taking some off afterwards. But I want to make sure that we've gotten all the detail, and the best way to do that is to slather it on. So as you see now, all I'm doing is taking it off. But even in this process of taking some of this wash off of the miniature and putting it onto the paper, I am still moving this wash around and getting it into the crevices. Now the great thing about this is it's actually currently stuck to the paper. There you go. So I don't actually have to hold it and make my fingers dirty. Not that that's an issue for me. Alright, so while I've got some excess wash, I'll put it on these guns. Obviously this is not how your guns will come. This is a prototype. I wanted to use one of your new ships because it's very, very exciting to have something new to paint. And this ship is just beautiful. It's just weird and wonderful. If it wasn't historical, I would say that it's something like Captain Nemo's submarine. Yeah, but it is. It's the real deal. It's the real Bouvet. There we go. Alright, there we go. So that's it. That's step 2 done. The oil is on. Those ships will now dry, and we'll get those lovely black windows. We'll get the black inside the funnels, the places where we really need that, and then we're going to try and avoid that when we come back to the dry brush. So I'll show you quickly while we're here. a dry brush. This is ultimately where we're headed. All right, it looks messy. Don't worry, it turns out beautifully. So that's a Chikuma. Um, and she's already been base coated and she's oiled, and I've done 2 dry brush coats on her. And you can see hopefully that there's still a lot of that black there on the windows and in the crevices. And all that's left to do on this one is the decking. Once the decking's done, I'll then paint in some of the other details. But that's where we're going to next, is dry brushing. Okay.